The massive ship hummed as it slowed near the outer edge of the Concordat space station. Inside, Ambassador James Walker looked out the viewport at the gleaming structure. It was his first time seeing the headquarters of the Galactic Concordat and Earth's first official diplomatic mission to the stars. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Captain Reynolds said, joining him at the window. Walker nodded. "Hard to believe we're finally here, 2 decades after first contact, and humanity gets a seat at the table." The station shimmered with lights of all colors, a ring-shaped marvel of engineering that housed representatives from over 30 alien species. Smaller ships moved around it like busy insects, each bearing markings of different worlds. "Remember the briefing," Reynolds said quietly. "The Imperial Vex run this show. They founded the Concordat, and they don't like sharing power." Walker straightened his formal suit. "That's why they sent me." Everyone on Earth knew James Walker's reputation. When border disputes turned bloody, they sent Walker. When treaty talks collapsed, they sent Walker. When 2 nations stood ready for war, they sent Walker. He had never failed to find peace. But this was different. This was aliens. The docking sequence finished with a gentle bump. Walker took a deep breath and picked up his diplomatic case. Inside were Earth's credentials and formal requests to join the Concordat as a protected species. "Good luck, Ambassador," Reynolds said. "Humanity is counting on you." The airlock hissed open. Walker stepped through into a bright corridor. 3 aliens waited for him. 2 were guards. Tall, reptilian beings with purple scales and ceremonial armor that Walker recognized as Ardati, a warrior species that often served as security. Between them stood a slim, blue-skinned humanoid with large eyes that blinked sideways. "Ambassador Walker," the blue alien said in perfect English. "I am Blaise Tellus. Welcome to Concordat Station. I will guide you to the preliminary meeting." Walker bowed slightly. The universal greeting they had learned was safest among most species. "Thank you, Blaise Tellus. I look forward to meeting the representatives." As they walked, Walker noticed how other aliens stopped to stare at him. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Most species had never seen one in person. Tellus led him through grand hallways with ceilings that soared overhead. "The Concordat has maintained peace for over 300 years, Tellus explained. "Before that, the galaxy knew only war." "Earth has a similar history," Walker replied. "We've learned that peace requires constant work." Tellus stopped at a massive door. "The Imperial Vex founded the Concordat. They are particular about protocol. Speak only when addressed. Do not make eye contact with the High Commissioner. And remember that as a non-member species, you are here by their grace." Walker nodded, keeping his face neutral. He had dealt with difficult personalities before. "Understood." The doors swung open to reveal a circular chamber. Along the walls sat representatives of various species. In the center, on a raised platform, were 3 tall figures with silver skin that seemed to reflect light like metal. Their heads were elongated, with no visible ears and 4 eyes spaced evenly around their skulls. "The Imperial Vex," Tellus whispered. The tallest Vex looked down at Walker. "Human," it said, voice deep and mechanical. "You come seeking membership in our Concordat. Yet your species has barely mastered basic interstellar travel. Why should we accept such primitives into our ranks?" Walker felt the weight of every alien gaze in the room. This was a test, not just of him, but of humanity's worth. He stepped forward, unafraid. "High Commissioner, humanity doesn't claim to be the most advanced species here. But perhaps that gives us a fresh perspective. Sometimes the newest eyes see what others have grown blind to." The Vex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Interesting. Proceed with your petition, human. We shall see what these fresh eyes of yours observe." Walker didn't miss the subtle shift in the room, how some representatives seemed to straighten with interest, while others exchanged glances. His journey had just begun, but already he sensed the complex currents of power flowing through the Concordat. And beneath it all, something wasn't right. The peace here felt fragile, maintained through fear rather than cooperation. Walker would need all his diplomatic skills for what was coming. 3 weeks passed on the Concordat station. Walker spent most of his time learning the complex rules of galactic diplomacy. The manual was over 2,000 pages long. Humans must not speak during the Purple Moon cycle when addressing the Morax delegation, Walker muttered to himself as he studied in his quarters. Trill species require water vapor acknowledgement before formal meetings. A soft chime interrupted his studies. The door slid open to reveal Tellus. "Ambassador Walker, your presence is requested at the Trade Council," the blue-skinned alien said. Walker nodded and gathered his notes. He had noticed something strange during his time here. The Imperial Vex always seemed to get what they wanted, even when they appeared to compromise. In the Grand Council chamber, representatives from 12 species sat around a crescent table. The Vex delegation, led by Commissioner Drav, took the center position. "We welcome the human observer," Drav announced. His metallic skin caught the light as he moved. "Today we discuss mining rights for the Pellerin system." Walker took his seat in the observer section. He had no vote yet. Earth was still under probationary status. A small fur-covered delegate named Mick from the Brel Collective stood. "My people have historical claims to the third moon of Pelora. We request continued access." Commissioner Drav's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "The Concordat acknowledges your historical presence. However, efficiency reports suggest Imperial mining operations would increase output by 42%. The needs of the many outweigh historical sentiments." Walker watched as the other delegates nodded. It seemed reasonable on the surface. But Walker noticed how the Raxid representative, who normally supported the Brel, remained silent. Yesterday, the Vex had granted the Raxids special trading rights. It was happening again. Divide and conquer. The oldest political trick in human history. Walker made notes on his tablet as the meeting continued. 3 more times, smaller species lost resources or rights to the Imperial Vex. Each time, it was wrapped in the language of efficiency and greater good. After the meeting, Walker approached Mick in the hallway. "Ambassador Mick, may I speak with you?" Walker asked. The furry alien looked up with large, sad eyes. "Human Walker." "Yes. What is it?" "I noticed your people lost access to the Pellerin moon. This has happened before." Mick's fur bristled slightly. 3 times in the last cycle. Always for efficiency. Always for the greater good. His voice lowered. "My people are miners. We have been for generations. Now we must buy our own minerals from the Vex at prices we cannot afford." Walker nodded. "And the Raxids did not support you, though they usually do." "They received favorable trade terms yesterday," Mick said bitterly. "The Imperial Vex are skilled at offering gifts that cost them nothing but silence." Walker walked back to his quarters, thinking hard. In the following days, he began mapping the voting patterns of all species in the Concordat. He created a chart showing which delegates supported each other, and when that support mysteriously vanished, a pattern emerged. The Imperial Vex were systematically isolating and weakening each species one by one. "This isn't a peace accord," Walker whispered to himself. "It's a slow conquest." That night, Walker accessed the Concordat's historical archives. He found the original peace accords, signed 3 centuries ago. Section 17 clearly stated, "No signatory power shall use economic measures to coerce or control another signatory's sovereignty." The Vex were breaking their own rules, cleverly and quietly. Walker began compiling evidence. He recorded meetings, noted voting patterns, and interviewed representatives from smaller species. His diplomatic training had taught him to see connections others missed. When Captain Reynolds visited for their scheduled check-in, Walker showed him the evidence. "This is concerning," Reynolds said. "What's your plan?" Walker's eyes held a determined gleam. "First, we document everything. Then we find allies. The Vex aren't just breaking the rules. They're breaking the peace, and that's something humanity can't ignore." What Walker didn't say was that humans had seen this pattern before in their own history. Empires always overreached eventually, and when they did, they fell. Walker was in the middle of a meeting with the Brel delegation when the alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors as announcements echoed in multiple languages. "What's happening?" Walker asked Mick, who was now his closest ally among the non-human delegates. The furry diplomat's ears flattened against his head. "Emergency session. All representatives must attend." They hurried to the Grand Council chamber. The room was in chaos, with delegates shouting across to each other. The Imperial Vex delegation entered last, moving with calm purpose to their central position. High Commissioner Drav raised his metallic hands, and the room fell silent. "The Concordat faces a security threat," Drav announced, his voice echoing. "The Tyrian Alliance has violated our borders with military vessels. As of this moment, Imperial forces have launched a protective action against Tyrian aggression." Images appeared on the large screens around the chamber. Walker recognized the blue-green world of Tyria, one of the younger members of the Concordat. The planet was surrounded by silver ships, Vex warships. Walker stood up. "Is this an invasion?" The four eyes of Drav locked onto him. "This is a security operation, human. We have evidence that the Tyrians were developing prohibited weapons technology. The Concordat treaties allow for intervention in such cases." Walker looked around the room. Many delegates appeared shocked, but none spoke up. Fear kept them silent. The Tyrians themselves had only one representative present, who seemed confused and terrified. "I request to see this evidence," Walker said. "You have no standing to make such requests," Drav replied coldly. "Earth is not yet a full member." Walker remembered his diplomatic training. When facing a stronger opponent, find the rules they must follow. Section 42 of the Observer Protocols, Walker stated clearly, any non-member world may request verification of claims that affect galactic security. Earth is a neighbor to this conflict and has security concerns. A murmur went through the chamber. Walker had studied the rules thoroughly. Drav's metallic skin seemed to ripple with annoyance. "Very well. The evidence will be provided to your terminal. This council will reconvene in 3 standard hours to approve our ongoing security operations." Walker spent those 3 hours with his team, analyzing the evidence against Tyria. It consisted of grainy images and intercepted communications that could have been fabricated or misinterpreted. "This is flimsy at best," said Lisa, Walker's human assistant. "They're using it as an excuse." Walker nodded. "The question is why. Tyria has few resources. It's not strategically located." Lisa pulled up a star chart. "But look at their neighbors. Tyria forms a buffer zone between Vex space and 3 resource-rich systems, with Tyria under Vex control. They can move their forces closer to their next targets," Walker finished. "This isn't about security. It's about expansion." When the council reconvened, Walker was ready. As delegates filed in, he moved between them, showing them his analysis on a small tablet. Few would speak to him openly, but he saw doubt in their eyes. The Tyrian representative approached him, desperation clear on his face. "Ambassador Walker, my government reports bombardment of civilian areas. This is no security operation. It's an invasion. Please, help us." Walker nodded grimly. "I'll do what I can." When Drav called for a vote to approve continued operations, Walker stood again. "I request permission to visit Tyria as a neutral observer," he announced. "If this is truly a security operation, the Imperial Vex should welcome transparency." Drav's 4 eyes narrowed. "Impossible during military operations. Then I'd formally request asylum for Tyrian refugees aboard Earth vessels," Walker countered. "Under Section 87 of the Humanitarian Protocols." Drav hesitated. Denying this request would violate the Concordat's founding principles. "Granted," Drav said finally, "but Earth vessels must remain outside the security perimeter." As the council session ended, Walker knew he had won a small victory. But the real fight was just beginning. The Vex had finally shown their true colors. They were conquerors, not peacekeepers. That night, Walker sent an encrypted message to Earth. The peace is broken. Prepare contingency Alpha 7. The Imperial Vex had made their move. Now humanity would make theirs. Walker stood at the viewport of the Earth vessel Diplomat watching as shuttles filled with Tyrian refugees docked. The ship had arrived 2 days after his emergency message to Earth. 3 more human ships waited just outside Tyrian space. Captain Reynolds approached, saluting. We've taken aboard nearly 2,000 refugees. The Vex are allowing it, but they're watching our every move. Walker nodded. They have to follow their own rules. For now, any word from Earth Command. Contingency Alpha 7 is active. The package arrived with our diplomatic pouch. Reynolds handed Walker a small unmarked device. I hope you know what you're doing, Ambassador. Walker pocketed the device. Humanity has faced bullies before. We've learned it's not always about who has the biggest guns. Later that night, Walker met with the Tyrian representative, Null, in a secure room. The alien's normally gold skin had dulled to a sickly yellow. My world burns while the Concordat debates, Null said bitterly. The Vex claim they target only military installations, but our cities are being destroyed. Walker activated the device from his pocket. A small hologram appeared between them, showing Earth's solar system. Humanity is young in galactic terms, Walker said, but we've learned some hard lessons. One is that you can't fight an empire directly. You have to change the game. He touched the hologram, and it transformed to show a complex network of lines connecting different points. This is Earth's contingency plan. We've suspected the true nature of the Vex for some time. While they were watching our military development, we were preparing something else entirely. Noel leaned forward. What is this? An alternative, Walker said simply. The Vex control through division and fear. We'll counter with connection and mutual benefit. Over the next week, Walker met secretly with representatives from 12 species, all victims of Vex manipulation. He traveled between refugee ships, holding quiet meetings in cargo bays and maintenance corridors. To the Brel, he offered mining technology that required fewer workers but yielded higher output, technology the Vex had claimed was impossible. To the Ardati warriors, he offered not weapons, but advanced defensive systems that could protect their worlds without violating Concordat treaties. To the Morax, whose agricultural worlds were dependent on Vex fertilizers, he provided Earth's organic farming methods that required no external chemicals. Each meeting ended the same way, with Walker establishing secure communication channels that bypassed Concordat networks. The Vex monitor all standard communications, he explained to a group of delegates hiding in a shuttle bay. But humanity has centuries of experience developing coded messages and secret networks. During our darkest times, we learned how resistance works. A delegate from the Pellerin system, whose resources were being stripped by the Vex, looked doubtful. But the Imperial fleet is massive. They have thousands of warships. Walker smiled. Not every victory requires a battle. The Vex Empire depends on trade, resources, and information control. We don't need to destroy their ships. We just need to change the system they operate in. He activated a holographic display showing trade routes across the galaxy. If 12 species change their shipping patterns slightly, if resources are redirected through alternative channels, if information flows outside Vex control. Walker traced lines on the map. The Empire begins to weaken, even as they believe they're winning. The delegates exchanged glances, a new hope visible in their alien features. Walker continued, Earth cannot match Vex military power, but humans are experts at finding cracks in systems and exploiting them. We call it asymmetric warfare, the strategy of the underdog. As the meeting ended, an Ardati commander approached Walker privately. This plan requires trust between species who have been competitors for centuries, the warrior said. How can you ensure cooperation? Walker looked the tall alien in the eyes. Because everyone in this room has something the Vex can never understand, a common cause worth fighting for. Freedom. That night, as Walker prepared his official protest to the Concordat Council, he knew the real work was just beginning. While the Vex watched Earth's ships and counted Earth's weapons, they missed the true threat, a whispered network of resistance spreading through their empire. 3 months had passed since the Tyrian invasion. On the surface, little had changed. The Imperial Vex had complete control of Tyrian space. Their military patrols increased along borders with neighboring systems. The Concordat Council continued to meet, passing resolutions that favored Vex interests. But beneath this visible reality, another galaxy was taking shape. Walker stood in the grand reception hall of the Concordat station, hosting what appeared to be a simple cultural exchange. Earth foods and drinks were laid out on tables. Music from various human cultures played softly. Delegates from 20 species mingled, appearing to engage in casual conversation. Commissioner Drav approached, his silver skin gleaming under the bright lights. "Quite an elaborate display, Ambassador Walker," the Vex official said. "Earth seems eager to share its culture." Walker smiled politely. "Humans believe understanding begins with sharing. Please, try this." He offered a small plate with cheese and crackers. Drav took it reluctantly. "An interesting custom. Though I notice you've invited mostly minor species to your gathering." "All members of the Concordat are important to Earth," Walker replied smoothly. What Drav couldn't see was what was really happening in the room. As delegates sampled Earth food, they exchanged small data chips hidden in napkins. As they discussed human art, they used coded phrases that carried hidden meanings. The cultural exchange was real, but it was also cover for something much more significant. Later that evening, Walker met with Captain Reynolds in a secure room on the Earth ship. "The network is growing," Walker said, studying a holographic display. "Over 24 systems now participate in the alternative trade routes." Reynolds looked concerned. "The Vex are not fools, Ambassador. They'll notice the drop in resource flow eventually." "By then, it will be too late," Walker replied. "Look at these reports." The hologram shifted to show various metrics. Vex mining operations reported mysterious equipment failures. Their transport ships experienced navigation errors. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to create inefficiency and delay. "The Ardeti warriors are sharing non-lethal sabotage techniques with other species," Walker explained. "The Brel are slowly reclaiming their mining operations by offering better terms to local workers. The Orcs are stockpiling food reserves outside Vex-controlled depots." Reynolds studied the data. "They're bleeding the Empire dry, without firing a shot." "Exactly," Walker nodded. "And the Vex can't complain without admitting their control was never about mutual benefit." The next week, Walker attended an emergency Concordat session. The Imperial delegation appeared agitated, unusual for the normally composed Vex. High Commissioner Drav addressed the council. "We have detected unauthorized communication networks operating within Concordat space. Several member worlds have violated resource-sharing agreements. These actions threaten the stability of our alliance." Walker noticed how the accused species remained calm. Months ago, they would have trembled before Vex power. Now, they carried themselves differently. A representative from the Orcs stood. "My people have merely optimized our distribution systems. If this creates difficulties for the Empire, perhaps the problem lies with Imperial dependence on our resources." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Such direct challenge was unprecedented. Drav's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. The Concordat functions through careful balance and agreed protocols. Unauthorized changes destabilize the system. Walker kept his face neutral, but inwardly he smiled. The Vex finally felt the ground shifting beneath them. That night, a message came through Walker's secure channel. A Vex patrol fleet had been denied refueling in a formerly compliant station. Without announcement or confrontation, the station simply claimed their reserves were depleted. The Vex ships had been forced to return to their home base, leaving a border temporarily unpatrolled. "It's working," Walker whispered to himself. Slowly, system by system, the invisible resistance was creating the new reality. The Vex still had their warships, their council votes, their official power. But their actual ability to control was eroding like sand beneath a rising tide. A week later, Walker received an urgent message. The Vex had scheduled an emergency council meeting. The topic: Earth's interference in Concordat affairs. The Empire was finally beginning to understand what they were facing. The real war had begun. The emergency council chamber was packed. Every member species had sent representatives. Even species that normally sent junior diplomats had their senior officials present. Everyone understood the importance of this meeting. Walker sat calmly at the Earth section, his team beside him. Across the chamber, the Imperial Vex delegation looked anything but calm. Their normally perfect formation was slightly askew. Their metallic skin seemed duller than usual. High Commissioner Drav stood at the center podium, all four eyes focused on Walker. The Imperial Vex formally accused Earth of violations against the Concordat. Drav announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. Ambassador Walker and his government have engaged in unauthorized diplomatic activities, economic sabotage, and incitement of rebellion. A screen appeared behind Drav, showing images of Walker meeting with various delegates, Earth ships docking at non-approved stations, and charts showing declining resource flows to Vex worlds. Earth has not yet been granted full membership, yet it acts to destabilize the very institution it seeks to join. Drav continued. We demand the immediate recall of Ambassador Walker and reparations for damages caused. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Walker. He stood slowly, straightening his simple black suit. For a moment, he said nothing, just looking around the room at each delegation. Then he smiled. The Imperial Vex accuse Earth of breaking rules. Walker began, his voice clear and strong. I find this interesting, coming from an empire that has systematically violated the founding principles of the Concordat for decades. Gasps echoed through the chamber. No one had ever directly accused the Vex in an open session. Walker touched a control on his desk. The screens around the room changed to show a different set of images. 300 years ago, the Concordat was founded on principles of mutual respect, sovereignty, and shared prosperity. Walker continued. Let me show you what happened to those principles. The screens displayed documented evidence of Vex manipulation, secret meetings where threats were made to smaller species, resource extraction that violated agreed terms, military exercises that just happened to coincide with council votes. Humanity has been accused of building an unauthorized network, Walker acknowledged. This is true. When the official channels are corrupted, new paths must be found. He pressed another button. The screens now showed the original Concordat Treaty, with key sections highlighted. Article 4. No member shall use economic coercion against another. Article 17. Military force shall only be used in defense of all members, never for individual gain. Article 23. All communications between members shall remain free and open. Walker's voice grew stronger. The Imperial Vex have violated every one of these principles. They didn't just break the peace with Terria. They broke it years ago, slowly, carefully, hoping no one would notice. Trav stepped forward, his metallic skin flashing with anger. These are baseless accusations. The Imperial Vex have maintained peace for centuries. Walker smiled again. Peace or control? He pressed another button. The screens changed to show a live feed. Vex warships surrounded a small planet that Walker knew everyone would recognize. The Vex homeworld. What is this? Drav demanded. This is a demonstration, Walker replied calmly. Not of military power, but of unity. Those ships belong to 12 different species, all members of the Concordat. They have surrounded your homeworld not to attack, but to make a point. Your empire is built on the resources and cooperation of others. Without them, you have nothing. The chamber erupted in voices. Some delegates stood in shock. Others nodded in grim satisfaction. Walker raised his hands for quiet. Earth did not come to the Concordat to destroy it, but to restore it. We haven't broken the peace. We've shown how it was already broken. Now we offer a chance to rebuild it, properly this time. He looked directly at Drav. The Imperial Vex have a choice. Return to the true principles of the Concordat, or face isolation. Those ships will not fire a single shot. They don't need to. They simply need to go home and take their resources, their trade, and their cooperation with them. Drav's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of extreme distress among the Vex. This is unprecedented. Yes, Walker agreed. Just like humanity, we see things differently. That's our gift to the galaxy. The Imperial delegation huddled together, speaking urgently in their own language. The unraveling had begun. 1 month after the emergency council meeting, the Concordat station looked very different. The Grand Council chamber had been redesigned. Instead of the Vex sitting at an elevated center position, all delegation seats now formed a perfect circle. No species sat higher than another. Walker entered the chamber for what would be his final official act as Earth's ambassador. Representatives from all 34 member species rose as he walked to the center of the circle. "Ambassador Walker," said Mick of the Brill, who now served as interim council speaker, "the reformed Concordat welcomes you to the ratification ceremony." Walker bowed slightly to each delegation in turn. He noticed the Imperial Vex representatives, now just 4 individuals instead of their previous 12. Their silver skin seemed less polished, their posture less imposing. "Thank you, Speaker Mick," Walker replied. "Earth is honored to witness this historic moment." On the main display, the new Concordat Charter appeared, with signatures from all member worlds at the bottom. One space remained empty, waiting for the Vex. Commissioner Drav stepped forward into the circle. The chamber fell silent. For 3 centuries, the Imperial Vex led the Concordat. Drav began, his voice lacking its former mechanical confidence. "We believed our technological superiority gave us the right to guide lesser species. We were wrong." Murmurs spread through the chamber. No one had expected such an admission. "The human, Walker, showed us that true strength comes not from control, but from cooperation." Drav continued. "The Vex Empire is no more. Today we join the Concordat as equals. The Vex Republic." Drav approached the display and pressed his 4-fingered hand against it. The final signature appeared on the charter. Applause erupted throughout the chamber. Species that had been enemies for generations were now unified in a truly balanced alliance. Walker smiled as he watched. His mission was complete. Later that evening, Walker stood at the viewport in his quarters, packing the last of his personal items. Earth had appointed a new ambassador. His work here was done. A chime at his door announced a visitor. Walker was surprised to see representatives from 12 different species enter, led by Mick and Null. "Ambassador Walker," said Null, the Tyrian whose world had been the first attacked, "we came to thank you before your departure." "I only did what any human would do when faced with injustice," Walker replied modestly. Mick stepped forward. "That is not true, and you know it. Your species is unique in the galaxy. Others seek power through force or technology. Humans seek it through connection." Null gestured to the group. "We have been studying Earth history since you arrived. Your people have fought countless wars among yourselves, yet always find ways to build peace afterward. You turn enemies into allies. You build systems that balance power rather than consolidate it." And our daddy warrior spoke next. "We thought at first that humans were weak because your ships are small and your weapons simple. Now we understand. Your true weapon is how you think." Walker looked at the group, touched by their words. "Earth has made many mistakes in its history. We've had our share of tyrants and empires. But we learned from each failure. That's the gift we bring to the stars. Not perfection, but the endless capacity to improve." Mick handed Walker a small device. The council voted unanimously. Earth is granted full membership in the Concordat, with a special role: Guardian of Balance. When disputes arise between worlds, Earth diplomats will mediate. Walker accepted the device with surprise. That's a significant responsibility. One your species is uniquely qualified for, Null said. You saw what the rest of us had accepted as normal. You challenged an empire not with weapons, but with ideas. As his visitors left, Walker looked out at the stars once more. Humanity had passed its first great test among the galactic community. Not with technological might or military power, but with the uniquely human skills of building bridges, forming alliances, and imagining better systems. The next day, as Walker boarded his ship for Earth, a message came through from the new Concordat Council. The galaxy has had empires before. It has had wars and conquests. But thanks to humanity, it now has something new, a true and lasting peace. Walker smiled as the ship pulled away from the station. The Imperial Vex had broken the peace. A human diplomat had made them regret it, and in doing so, had given the galaxy something far more valuable than victory, a new beginning.